All right. Hi, folks. Hopefully you can hear us. This is Tyler, co-founder of Nobi, here with Drew. We'll do quick intros in a second, but we were just catching up quickly as we started the webinar off. I know it usually takes a couple of minutes for folks to trickle in. I am joining from the beautiful El Paso, Texas today. So it's a really cool city. Haven't spent much time out here on site with the customer. Been a great experience so far. Just in terms of house cleaning, if folks have questions, we plan to use about a half hour. I know we have 45 minutes set aside, but I think we'll only need a half hour to be able to kind of go through all this and be able to answer your questions. So as we're going, if you all have any open questions, please use the Q&A feature in the webinar. You should be able to post questions there, and I'll keep an eye on that as you're talking, Drew, and then if you could do the same as I'm chatting, we can kind of go. We don't need to save those questions until the end. Drew and I are more than happy and comfortable to just kind of pause and take questions as they come in. But with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. So Drew, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to chat with you about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. For everyone, I'm Drew Diehl, EVP of Client Strategy at Stream. Stream Company is for a full service ad agency, but I think this is a topic we can't get away from. I feel like for everyone at NADA, there was probably if you took a shot every time somebody said the word, I guess the letters AI, you probably wouldn't have made it through like maybe an hour of the show. But I think it's a really important topic, and obviously, I think we're gonna hit this from a couple different angles. Kind of how shoppers are finding and utilizing AI to find cars and buy cars. It's a very different shopper journey. And then, Tyler, I think you'll talk through what does the website actually look like? How does the landscape change once a consumer actually gets to the site? And I think from my experience from like an SEO background and a UX standpoint, having that seamless kind of customer experience and connecting the dots of how they're finding you and then making that a consistent kind of meeting their expectations when they get to the site is super important. So I know we'll talk through all that. Tyler, before I kind of jump into some of the shopper journey, any other introduction or additional items from you?
No, I mean, I think you basically hit it. I will share my screen really quickly just to recap the agenda. Really, the purpose of the call today is for you all to walk away with like actionable insights. I hate webinars where you show up and there's just like a bunch of fluff, but you don't actually know how to apply anything that was talked about to your day to day. So this was for folks who registered. This was kind of the agenda. So we'll start with Drew kind of talking about the shift that's happening, what behavior you guys see at Stream in terms of the data across your client base, how shopper behavior is changing. And then I'll come in with kind of what does this mean in terms of activity on your website? What is the kind of buyer journey as they go about shopping for vehicles on your dealer website? What are parts in that process that are going to be appended or already are being appended by AI, and where you can use tools like Nobi, our conversational site assistant, to help remove that friction. And then again, hopefully we can wrap up the last 5 minutes just in terms of like recapping what are things that you could do today, irrespective of engaging with a Stream or a Nobi, just things that you could do today to be able to start heading in the right direction so that it's more actionable. And we'll answer questions as we go. So with that, Drew, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll kind of hand things over to you.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. And if for anybody who's joined the webinar or who's joined this webinar, and if you've joined a Stream webinar probably over the last 2 years, this is a topic I'm sure you've heard me talk about at length from the early days of search generative experience, which was the beta where Google started to incorporate AI generated responses directly on the search engine results page. And I called that maybe a little bit chicken little, but I said that was the biggest change in digital marketing since the invention of the internet. And at the time, I think I saw it more as it was changing how people find information. But as we've kind of progressed over the last 2 years, I think the biggest shift is changing how people find information and how they think through getting access to information. My wife is currently looking for a car. She did not look at any ads. She did not start with Google or even go to a dealer website. The first thing she did is go to ChatGPT and ask, based on everything you know about me and my personality and everything that I've interacted with from a personal and professional standpoint, with previous chats, what cars would you recommend and why? And I think that's like a fundamental change in how people think about buying a car, because they're not necessarily relying as much on their neighbor or their sister to say, "Oh, I saw this car. It's great. You should go test drive it." They're coming to the table and getting to a dealer's website with a lot of this information kind of already preloaded. Now she wants to get a Land Cruiser or a GX550, but of course she can then
Hmm.
interact with these different results on ChatGPT or even Google or Claude, fill in the large language model here, um, to really start to understand and gauge like what is my buyer intent based on what I'm looking for. She travels an hour to work each way every day. So maybe the gas mileage on the GX550 is really not the best concept. And it's continually refining and utilizing AI, to get a better idea of how she should shop and what she should actually consider and look for. And from there, she's not blindly, and I would say it's very similar for a lot of car buyers, is they're not necessarily blindly taking this at face value, but it's giving them an idea of maybe they haven't considered before. Um, and so as we talk about like kind of the how AI and large language models are changing search behavior, it's fundamentally flipping the buyer journey and the shopper journey completely on its head. Rather than, going from I saw a connected TV ad to I searched on Google, clicked on a paid search ad, went to the website, converted on the website, went to the showroom, test drove, buy the car. It's all of these different touch points and almost like micro influences across all of the different landscapes that a person can interact with information. So maybe when we think about SEO and kind of the evolution of SEO. You can throw in all these different acronyms, GEO and AEO, whatever it might be. But the fundamental base layer of that is how are people finding information and then how are they actioning on that information? Because we're so used to,
Hmm.
to thinking through like search and performance marketing as how am I driving traffic and conversions to my site? But that example of what I just went through of my wife's car buying experience, she didn't click on a single website. She didn't go and convert initially, but that interaction with ChatGPT was purely awareness marketing. That is earned media
Hmm.
for Lexus or Toyota or whatever the brand might be that they didn't even expect. But because they have this core foundation of what their vehicles are, when a consumer interacts with a large language model, they're getting that earned media. And then the next step in that buyer journey is, okay, now my wife decided on a Land Cruiser. Where is she going to go buy it from? And that's, I think, a really
Hmm.
kind of interesting dynamic, and maybe how like tier one and tier two can influence these types of things. But then we start looking at tier three and how can that individual dealership actually capture her business so they don't go buy a vehicle from the competitor down the street. And that's sort of the next
Right.
layer is for her to then get to a dealer website, she would go to Google and say Toyota dealer near me, and that doesn't change fundamentally. So, there's a my chicken little theory that everything's going to change with AI search. In some ways it's right, but at the end of the day, right now, customers still are going to go to a dealer website. They're not going to search only on a large language model. And so how you're capturing even, I mean, Toyota dealer near me or fill in whatever the city, that has been a keyword that SEOs and paid search individuals have tried to capture and paid for and hone in on forever. And that doesn't change because people still need to go to a website. Now, I said at the top, where people are now going to a website with all of this different information and maybe background, and they're
Right.
more understanding of kind of what everything, they're coming with a different intent. And so I think where the next iteration is, how do we match that intent when they get to a website, and give them the
Hmm.
features that they really want. I started as an SEO specialist at Stream, and one thing that I was always honed in on, and one of my core focuses is a website should make it really easy to find the information that a user wants as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. That's all that matters. get out of their way
Yeah.
and let them find that information. And I don't know, Tyler, if you feel like you've had a different
Yeah.
experience or can talk through, that shopper journey or what it looks like on a website.
No, I mean, I think ultimately, as humans, we're pretty lazy. We like the path of least resistance. And I'm old enough to remember the days when, the internet exploded and we went from, searching through books to find answers to things to now just simply asking in simple keywords for what you're looking for and seeing those things appear on the screen. And so I think the next iteration of that is like, don't force me to use keywords. Don't force me to talk like a machine and use like 2 to 3 words to describe this to you so that you could search through a database. Large language models, these AI chatbots just allow me to talk to you like a human and just tell you like your wife, right? Like, hey, I don't even, I've never heard that before. That's a really interesting way to do it is like, instead of saying, hey, I'm a, mother. I have 3 kids. I drive to work an hour every day, right? Like that's
Right.
like even cutting all that work out and just saying like,
Right.
hey, you already know all this stuff about me. So like start recommending vehicles for me. That is the ultimate removal of, friction in the path to least resistance. So, Drew, I want to hit on, because that's a good segue to like where you can start to optimize the website to make it much easier for a person with that kind of high intent to navigate to the vehicles they want. And I can
Sure.
certainly share examples of what that looks like. But you hit on before this idea of like acronyms, AEO, GEO. You're such an expert in SEO, and you've seen this transition happen now across multiple different waves of technology. Like, what do you think? What I hear from a lot of dealers is like, they just get overwhelmed when they think about AEO, GEO. Like,
Yep.
what am I supposed to do? Is this about like enriching data on my website? Like, what do you think is like a simple, actionable step that a dealer can take to help in the process of like what you said with your wife to help them show up or
Yep.
help provide helpful information? Like, yeah, can you kind of hit on that to demystify?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. And there's so much, I feel like I go on LinkedIn every single day and see some new AI SEO tool or some new something or other. And what's funny is I follow a lot of SEO experts across other industries as well, like not just automotive and a lot of what has been good SEO for 10 years is still very, very fundamentally good SEO and AEO or GEO. I had somebody sent me a message the other day that was talking through how you need to have the right site architecture and you need to have schema markup in all of your pages because the crawl bots and large language models need to understand the underlying information that's within a page in a different way than a human would. That's been the standard for 5 to 10 years at this point, is making sure that all those things work.
Mhm.
But it's continuing to refine and better what that structure actually looks like and making sure that you're not falling asleep at the wheel. I will say that a lot of automotive websites, their priority is making sure the website functions properly. Whereas an SEO and an SEO agency, their focus is making sure that the website is set up optimally for people to find the website. And so we sometimes make assumptions that just because a website provider is creating this site with my best intentions, I'm paying them money, that they're going to make all of these insertions with schema markup or the URLs are properly tagged and all of those pieces. And I think from one simple actionable step is actually making sure that the site is set up like that because there can be a lot of assumptions that everything is structured in this perfect way. The sitemap is really clean so that crawlbots and large language models can easily connect the dots between information. Oftentimes that's not the
Mhm.
case. And dealer websites have so many pages with all of the inventory and like sometimes that technical structure is not there. And sort of the
Mhm.
next piece of that, which is SEO, but not SEO, because I think a lot of people think of reputation management outside of SEO. For me, it's a real a function and a subset of SEO because reputation management, large language models bring in user generated content and user generated reviews way more than traditional search algorithms have historically. So your Google reviews are
Mhm.
incredibly important to show up in a large language model or any type of AI search. It is truly like one of the best SEO tips is have a good business where your customers are really engaging with you and enjoy buying from you. Like it's not real SEO,
Mm.
but it's going to have massive SEO implications that I think we can really take advantage of. And then I've been rambling for a bit, but I'll close it up quickly that
No, it's great.
I think one misconception that I really want to hammer home with all of these AI tools is that more content doesn't mean better content. And in the same vein
Mm.
that like good SEO is good SEO is good SEO, no matter if it's for a large language model or a traditional search algorithm, a lot of the like content stuffing and the content spinning is coming back. Where 5 or 10 years ago, there was this big push for content spinning where you would like programmatically do SEO, and it was really, really great at ranking. Then Google Rank Brain came out and different algorithm updates that solved for that. And a lot of that is coming now because AI models are so good at generating fantastic content that some of these AI
Mm.
tools I've seen, they can produce, I don't know, name the number, 100, 1,000 pages per month on every little micro topic that you could ever possibly want. But at the end of the day, they're
Mm.
built for machines and not for users. And so it's more content doesn't always equal more results. And again, I think in
Right.
automotive, we talk about what are those results? Are we looking for keyword rankings or showing up in large language models, or are we looking for actual real in-market customers to come to our site and buy a car? Because they're two different things. In
Hmm.
many cases, we get distracted by what looks good in a Google Analytics report or looks good in a keyword research tool report when we fail to actually think about, are we driving people around our dealership to come to our site, submit a lead, and buy a car?
Right. Okay. So that's great. Actually, you kind of, I love it, everything in three, like three steps. Like I'm thinking about, all right, if I were a dealer, participating in this webinar or watching the recording, and I was thinking about bringing Stream in to help with this kind of
Sure.
idea of, this massive mountain of AEO in my head. I think of it as this like huge mountain to climb, and I don't really want to climb it. You
Yep.
guys would come in and you'd say, okay, step one, the structure of the site
Yep.
map, the structure, like you help them clean that up to just get the foundation in place. Step two would be user generated content, whether that's reviews or other pieces of content that you have. That's obviously fantastically valuable to
Yep.
even traditional SEO, but certainly the AI chat assistants. And then phase three or step three would be kind of what you were just touching on there with like quality over
Yep.
quantity of content. So really trying to understand
100%.
what are your goals, who are the customers you're trying to speak to. Let's zero in on the right content for them. That's pretty actionable and understandable for me. And I don't even own a dealership. Like I would imagine if you're a dealership and you're worried about climbing that mountain, that kind of three-step process, but with an expert like you coming in, helps
Yep.
you go from like being overwhelmed to like, okay, let's take action on this. Cool.
Totally.
The other thing you hit on, just being cognizant of time. And by the way, I'm taking a look at the Q&A, folks. So if you have anything that's come in, I know we're covering a lot here. Feel free to post a question in the Q&A. But you mentioned before, this idea of folks coming in already with a high degree of intent, with a high degree of education around, what vehicles they're looking for and why. You gave the example of your wife, right? She's already had all these discussions with AI assistants like ChatGPT. And so now she's in a place where, if you think about the car buying journey, she's already gotten through these first two steps, right, of awareness and consideration. Now she's coming to a site with a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and with an intent to evaluate a purchase. And so this is a study that was done, it was kind of referenced in the landing page for this webinar and in the comms that we sent out. This was a study done by BCG about 6 months ago, which showed that about 40 million car shoppers a year in the United States are using AI, influenced by AI in some capacity towards getting to a dealer website. And so this is where we get passionate on the Nobi end. Everything you just mentioned is kind of what happens off your website, which is, to me, even a big, scary mountain. It's something we don't have a ton of expertise in. That's why we love partnering with folks like Stream. But where we do apply AI is like, okay, now they're on your site. What are the specific capabilities you need to have on your site where you're using generative AI? And so here's an example of one of our customers. This is Hennessy Jaguar in Atlanta. Hennessy is one of the largest car dealers in Atlanta. And so, you come to the site, there's a lot of information. To your point, humans, path of least resistance. How do I navigate this complex set of information? And Nobi is a tool that allows you to, simply brand an AI assistant on your site, such that you think about someone like your wife that spent all this time chatting with ChatGPT. They are familiar and not only accustomed to, but are increasingly starting to prefer to navigate information on a website this way instead of clicking, filtering, scrolling. So let's say I am interested in, let's say, this is Nobi right here, and this is not branded according to Hennessy. Other dealerships we're live with, this is kind of our standard right out the box AI search, but other dealerships would take the time to actually like match the branding to their site. But let's say I'm interested in, looking for family friendly, and you actually can misspell, but I'm going to go ahead just for posture to spell correctly. Looking for family and friendly, I'll say pre-owned SUVs with less than 35,000 miles. So this wouldn't be exactly the same scenario as your wife, and I'm actually going to open up a tab just in the interest of time. I'm going to show you kind of what the end result looks like. It usually takes about 10 seconds or so to come back. But this is something that's lacking today. You talk to a lot of dealerships today and they say, hey, we've got certain AI chatbots and they're great for answering kind of question and answer information. But what they really struggle with is inventory search. And that's because usually a lot of these chatbots are not actually leveraging large language models like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Claude. So Nobi, our product, we use those large language models, and then we take all the data that exists on your site, convert that into embeddings, which is a fancy way of saying numbers that are easy for those large language models to then accurately search the site and then come back with this response. One of the biggest concerns we hear when we go live or when someone's evaluating a tool like this is, what kind of work are we going to have to do to like clean up our data, structure our data so that this thing works? And the answer has consistently been like, you honestly don't really have to do anything. If the data exists on your site, Nobi and tools like it will find a way to be able to answer these questions. If it doesn't exist at all on your site, well, then of course it's going to come back, with an answer. I wasn't able to find this answer. But let me pause here, Drew. I know we talked about this before, but just in terms of like awareness and consideration, this is one application of generative AI that works really well on the site. And we see on average a 30% increase in conversion rate of visitors searching with us versus the default search, converting into interested leads for the site.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I almost look at it as like, what's the alternative? Like if my wife shows up on the site, even just let's say she's interested in an F-Pace right now, the alternative would be now she's going through the SRP, trying to find the vehicles that are under her mileage threshold and going through and saying, no, not that one. That's not what I'm looking for. Like it takes this like hyper, I wouldn't even say like intellectual, but more like somebody who's used to doing this fast-paced generative research, and then they now have to go through this very manual process. Like that is a straight up disruption of like, cool, all right,
Right.
I now know I want to get an F-Pace. Let me go search for Jaguar dealer near me. I live in Atlanta. Hennessy's GBP pops up. Awesome. Click on that, and then I got to find a specific vehicle now. And now it's a
Yeah.
pain in the
And
butt because I have to go through all these hoops.
yeah, and you got to click these filters, or in this case, mileage isn't even a filter that exists, right? So
Right.
you can't even go through it. Sometimes the filters work, sometimes they don't. So that's one area. But to your point, I think most people are coming to sites not they've already done research. And so they're not necessarily putting in a search query like that. They may be more interested in like, let's say I'm looking through a bunch of Jaguars. I know that there's the F-Pace and there's the I-Pace. What is the difference? So what is the difference between the F-Pace and I-Pace, right? Comparisons is another big area for us. And again, just in the interest of time, I ran this before we started. What is the difference between the E-Pace and the I-Pace? So here's another area where this would take historically lots of time scrolling through, trying to understand. And what we hear from folks is what they end up doing is, of course, like just going to ChatGPT and asking the question and leaving the dealer website. Like, hey, what's the difference between these things? Which comes with a huge risk, because if you leave the dealer website, now you're in ChatGPT, you're chatting about this. ChatGPT might also recommend some other vehicles that have nothing to do with the inventory that you sell based on what the user is looking for. And so you lost that shopper either because they've already bounced from your website, they're using ChatGPT, they got distracted, or ChatGPT tools like it are recommending other products. But if you can implement a tool like this, that doesn't happen. Nobi and tools like it, we only use the data that exists in your site. And we've built this all out, the ability to just generate this type of user experience based on the data you have on the site. Again, find it works really well. Last, and probably most importantly, I feel like I'm talking too much here, so I'm going to close it out. The vast majority of people coming to dealer websites are landing on a VDP, and they have questions about that specific vehicle, right? To your point, they've done a ton of research. They know they want a F-Pace, but they have very specific considerations of the type of F-Pace they want. And so maybe they're interested in, like, does this vehicle have air-conditioned seats? So evaluating a product is, and again, I'll just show you kind of what this looks like. Does it have air-conditioned seats? The details for this model has heated front seats, including sports seats, but they don't mention ventilated or air-conditioned seats. So it appears it doesn't have it. Are there other questions I can answer for you? This is where we see a lot of our engagement, is people evaluating on a VDP a specific model. And they are doing this across multiple dealer websites. So if they're looking for an F-Pace, they're going to your dealership site. They may be looking at a dealer site in a totally different county, totally different state. And they're trying to get answers to, does this thing check my boxes? And so the more you can engage with them, answer their questions as quickly and efficiently as possible, the more likely you are to get them to come in and book a test drive or chat with one of your sales associates, so that they have all this data to know, hey, I know you're looking for this specific vehicle with the air-conditioned seats, this type of warranty coverage. We don't have something like that on the site today, but we do have something that's in transit or something, that's on the showroom floor. Why don't you come in? We'll book an appointment. So anyway, I've been talking way too much, Drew. I'm going to pause there and just get your feedback.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and you can also flip the example I gave on its head. Let's say instead my wife drove past a Jaguar dealer on her way home from work and was like, oh, I want to see what's up with a Jaguar, but she doesn't know anything about it. That sort of like research process that she may have done on ChatGPT is now done probably on your site. And I think that's a really powerful piece, because now she's doing the comparison, and it feels more like an educational consultant but it almost also feels like a third party, because you don't feel like you're getting sold to by somebody who's really invested in you buying a Jaguar. It's just it's a model. It's just giving you information.
Right.
And I think that's a really, really powerful tool. And I swear nobody didn't pay me to to say all these things, but it makes very much intuitive sense.
Well, and to your point on the user-generated content concept from before, we're actually seeing there's like a flywheel now where we're working with the SEO side of the house, folks like you, to say, hey, we have all this user-generated content now because people are engaging with Nobi. These are the questions for these specific vehicles that they're asking. This is what they're most interested in. And so that can influence, that's data that you can use to run better ads, better SEO content, stuff like that.
Yep.
So I know we're coming up.
Oh, sorry, one last thing. FAQs are like one of, with reviews, like adding in real FAQs is such a powerful piece of content that's actually helpful to customers. Like it's not, we're not, it's SEO, but it's really just there as a helpful piece. So like developing a content just from an FAQ and actually having an idea of what customers are really asking, I think is incredible.
Yeah. And not just search queries, like 2-3 word queries, but like contextually rich, like sentences. Like these are women, mothers of 5. Like we know these details of like why they're buying these cars and what they're interested in, instead of just SUV with a third row. Cool. So, Drew, we had a question come in
Yep.
from Kendra. We'll answer it live. Is GMB traffic down because of AI?
Yes, 100%. The actual, I think the stats are, I'll probably butcher it, but it's close. When an AI overview is present on a search, the click-through rate goes from around 19%. This is blended across paid search and organic results to about 3%. So the presence of an AI response at the top of the search engine results page will significantly affect organic traffic and specifically Google My Business traffic. Now, there is one caveat where specific brand queries, so that's generally when your Google My Business will actually show up on the search engine results page if somebody is searching for your brand. Those are less likely to be impacted by AI overviews at this point. I do see that potentially changing, but so it's not going to have as big as of an impact as some other queries where it's more easily answered by an AI search result. With that, and if you're seeing your Google My Business traffic down, there was actually a bug that it's crazy it was this long, that dates back to, I believe, March of 2025 that just got resolved that was artificially inflating impression and I believe traffic volume to your Google Business profile in specifically in Google
Hmm.
Search Console, but that could also be another factor that I don't know if it's really swept around the automotive space, but I've seen it in a lot of places that there was this pretty significant bug that was artificially inflating some of the Google Business Profile search metrics.
Super interesting. I didn't know that. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to recap as we wait. Thank you, Kendra, for the question. If there's any other questions, feel free to use the Q&A to submit those. Maybe just to recap, though, Drew, based on everything you shared from an SEO, GEO side of the house, rather than, because I said at the beginning of the call, I want to have folks walk away with actionable tips. Rather than get kind of overwhelmed by this daunting task of like climbing the mountain that is GEO, you said kind of three things right off the bat that can be super helpful. You can help them with this, or they can do this on their own, which is, the structure, the site map and the structure of the site, making sure that's all cleaned up and able to be read by these LLMs, which is not rocket science. It takes some work, but it's not
Yeah.
rocket science. Number two is trying to figure out how to better incorporate user-generated content like reviews. If you have that content should be on your site, because that's going to help a lot with that. And then I'm blanking on number three. What was the last thing you said you help a lot with?
Oh gosh.
Oh, quality over
Yes,
quantity.
yes,
You
yes,
said,
yes. I should know
yes, yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, sorry, we've covered a lot here.
all
So
good.
quality over quantity, you were saying you guys would work with them, or you can kind of sit down intentionally yourself as a marketing org within your dealership to really understand like who is the customer you're targeting and why, and what content is going to speak most to them. Focus on high quality content for that, rather than just pushing out tons and tons of content, which is really not going to be helpful.
Yep, 100%. And I think
Cool.
the last
And
piece is there's no need to recreate the wheel. A lot of yes, there are new things and there are different levers you can pull, but good SEO is good SEO is good SEO, whether it's for a large language model or a traditional search engine.
yep, makes sense. Well, we are going to share the recording immediately after this. So for folks, I know we had some folks join kind of midway through. If you missed the beginning parts, don't worry about that. We're going to get the recording out to y'all ASAP. But Drew, thanks so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, appreciate it, Tyler.
All right. We'll talk soon. Take care, y'all. Hope you have a great rest of your week.